Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Matthew Phifer. I'm a therapist, coach, author. And on my page, it's my goal to help people move from toxic relationships to healthy relationships. Sometimes that might be relationships with other people. And in other situations, it might be a relationship with yourself. And today we're going to be talking about hoovering. If you're not familiar with the term hoovering, it's when you go through a breakup or divorce with someone with some narcissistic tendencies, and they do what they can to try to manipulate and suck you back into the relationship. For people who struggle with this can be very, very confusing. With that being said, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get this started. Today we are going to be talking about signs that you're not really actually in love, but you're actually being hoovered. So what a lot of people don't know, what they don't understand about hoovering, the term hoovering comes from the vacuum cleaner, the Hoover vacuum cleaner, where obviously all vacuums suck things back into the cleaner. And for a lot of people, they actually deal with this type of situation when they're ending or they have ended a relationship where they get sucked back into a toxic relationship. And what people don't realize is that this is a form of manipulation. You see, for those of you who may have been in this type of cycle, or if you know someone who's been in this type of cycle where they're constantly breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together. And when you listen to people, or sometimes when you're listening to yourself, reasoning the reasons why someone should get back together, you don't even realize that oftentimes that one or both people are being manipulated into believing that things are going to change or holding on to false hope. Obviously, there are a lot of things that go into this where one or both people can be trauma bonded, but we also have to understand that oftentimes there is this cycle of manipulation, hoovering, where one or both people are getting sucked back into this cycle. So we're going to talk about those dynamics, and we're going to talk about 6 signs that you are being hoovered. So as you're hopping in, if you have questions, make sure you put it in the comment section down below. Once again, if you're new here, my name is Matthew Phifer. I'm a therapist, coach, author, and I help people who are in unhealthy relationships, unhealthy relationship dynamics, help people recognize manipulation, emotional abuse, those sorts of things. So if you are into those type of things, or if you're in a situationship, or if you're going through a divorce or breakup, then you're most definitely in the right spot. So make sure, once again, that you put your questions and your comments into the comment section down below. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic. So we're talking about hoovering. And so once again, like I mentioned before, hoovering is a manipulative tactic, right? That people oftentimes will employ. Right. Oftentimes, it is someone with narcissistic tendencies. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are a narcissist, but they definitely can be somewhere on that spectrum or have some of those traits and some of those tendencies, either through learned or they just have those traits themselves. So one of the things we have to understand is that the reason why people oftentimes will suck people back into a relationship dynamic is for control. And the reason why I wanted to make sure that people understood that this has a lot to do with narcissistic tendencies is because, remember, when we're dealing with someone who has narcissistic traits and tendencies, they want what's called narcissistic supply, right, where they enjoy having control. And one of the things I talk about this often, they don't care if the narcissistic supply is good or bad in terms of arguments or like love bombing. They just like the attention. They like the intensity of the relationships. So there's arguably no more, and there is arguably the most intense portion of a relationship oftentimes is the breakup. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of people talking about it. There's a lot of intense emotions that are happening, right? So it goes without saying that someone who might be on that narcissistic spectrum might want to suck you back in to try to not only for the emotional response and to see the reaction and the response, but also for their own admiration in terms of the way that people look at the relationship and to save their own face, right? So the term, like I mentioned before, comes from the Hoover vacuum brand, right? That symbolizing how people can get sucked back into this sphere of influence. So with that being said, we have to understand that the number one sign that you are being hoovered and that this isn't someone who genuinely wants you back, right, is empty promises. So the person promises to make changes, right? So you may initiate a divorce, you might initiate a breakup. Maybe they initiated a divorce or breakup, but they promise to make changes to the problematic behavior. I'm not going to hit you again. I'm not going to. I'm going to stop cheating. I cut this person off. I cut off my mistress. I cut off this guy. I'm never going to talk to this person again. I'm going to change jobs so then I'm not working with this person again, right? Or to improve, I'm finally going to go to therapy, right? How many of you have been into those in these type of dynamics, in these type of situations? They make all these type of promises, but the promises are very rarely fulfilled. And I say rarely because sometimes people really will actually go to therapy, but will they actually follow through? Will they actually make those changes? Probably not, right? So what ends up happening is that this type of behavior will suck you back into the relationship. And once you're actually back into the relationship, once you move back in, once you call off the divorce, once you call off the breakup, once they know that they have you back, all of a sudden, what is it that you typically see? You see them going right back to the problematic behavior. And the cycle begins to repeat all over again. And oftentimes the reason why this works is because someone is holding on to false hope that this person has the ability or even has the desire to change, right? So sometimes people have the ability but really have no desire. So number one is empty promises. Number two, second way that people will suck you back into an unhealthy relationship. So for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about hoovering. And hoovering is a term that when people are coming out of a toxic relationship or they get sucked back into that toxic relationship. Number two is nonstop contact, right? Nonstop contact. So they start to bombard you with text messages. They start to bombard you with phone calls. I remember there was a person who I was working with several years ago where the person that they had recently left, this was a narcissistic woman in this situation, called them 80 times in 1 hour. Do the math on that. That's actually pretty crazy. 80 times in an hour, right? They bombard you. And sometimes when I say they bombard you with messages, it might not just be you. It could be to your job. It could be to your family. It could be to your kids. Anything they can do to try to break no contact or to try to, and oftentimes people don't like talking about this because sometimes it can be very embarrassing. And a lot of times the person who has no contact or who's ending the relationship, actually this type of behavior oftentimes makes that person feel guilty, right? Especially if they start contacting their friends and family. And so this is oftentimes in a way to try to aim to regain your attention. Remember, right? So there's a lot of narcissism and narcissistic traits that are attached to this type of behavior. And so what do they want? They want to regain your attention. They want you to constantly be thinking about them, right? And so this is one of the ways that they try to reestablish control. And also to disregard your boundaries, to disregard if you've gone no contact or if you have ended the relationship. And so this is one of the ways that they do this. So the first sign that you're being hoovered is empty promises, right? So they make promises that they can't keep. Number two is nonstop contacting. They're calling you, bombarding you with messages, bombarding you with DMs. This can go onto social media. They can call. It may not be directly to you. It could be to your friends. It could be to your family. It could be to your kids. It could be to work coworkers, those sorts of things. And so that's number two. So number three, sign that you're being hoovered and that they really don't genuinely want you back is over-the-top gestures, right? How many of you have experienced the over-the-top gestures? So one of the things when we talk about over-the-top gestures, we're talking about love bombing. One of the misconceptions that people have about love bombing is that it only happens in the beginning of a relationship. The reality of love bombing is that it can happen at any point in the relationship, even during the process of a breakup. And so what happens oftentimes, and this kind of go hand in hand with what we were talking about with empty promises, is that this causes a lot of people to hold on to that false hope more, where they start to say, well, they're finally starting to change. Things are finally getting back to the way they were in the beginning, but only to find out later on that it isn't, that it is a form of manipulation. This is where a lot of people struggle. We have to understand that love bombing is a form of manipulation. Right, so what this can look like is that after you call them out on their bad behavior, after you start to initiate divorce, after you start to initiate a breakup, all of a sudden they start to bombard you with gifts. They start to shower you with excessive affection, excessive attention, excessive declarations, attempting to win you back. So this could look like a trip. This is all very, very common. I remember there was someone I was working with a few years back who the person that they were with was consistently cheating on them. And every time that they would call them out on cheating and then they would initiate the divorce or breakup, they would go through a separation. The toxic person in this situation would take them on a trip to Mexico or taking them on a trip to Greece, somewhere lavish and some really nice trip. And that was oftentimes when they what the person who I was working with would struggle with was that this love bombing that they were going through, they didn't recognize it for what it was. They didn't recognize it for the manipulation that it was, because one of the things that they said is that when we're on vacation, everything is so good. Everything, I don't understand how come it can't just be like that, because it's not real life. It's not real life, right? So it's important to recognize that we have to understand that when we're talking about abuse, control, manipulation, that abuse, control, and manipulation, bad behavior doesn't work without a handful of good times. You have to have good times. You have to have the bait before the hook. So be aware of these. So that's number 3. Be aware of over-the-top gestures. Number 4, and for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about signs that you're being hoovered. Not that they really actually genuinely want you back and want to change behavior, but that this is a form of manipulation. People have to recognize that when you're ending a relationship, especially with someone who has narcissistic traits and tendencies, that they are going to do a manipulative tactic called hoovering, when they want to suck you back into the relationship. There's a lot of reasons why they might do this. One of the reasons why is because they want to keep control over you. Another reason why is because they actually want to break up with you. They want to break up with a divorce on their terms, not on your terms. That's something that's not talked about, but we can get into that here in a little bit. So also, I'm going to be taking some questions here once I'm done with the presentation. So make sure you put your questions in the comment section down below. Also, for those of you who might be struggling with a situation like this, if you want to work with me, I'm giving $50 off of your initial consultation. So you can come up here, you can click the link, click where my face is, click the link. You can book a one-on-one coaching session with me. Use the discount code MARCH50 to get $50 off your initial session. So with that being said, number 4 is that they're going to gaslight you. Right? So number 4 is that they're going to gaslight you. So they manipulate you into doubting your own perceptions or memories, that you didn't remember what happened appropriately, that you're misremembering things. So you're saying I cheated on you. I didn't, you're misremembering things. I didn't cheat. Like, I text them, but it wasn't exactly like that. And they begin to, sometimes they can begin to feign ignorance, where all of a sudden the things that actually happened, they start to play dumb. Right? Making you question your own reality and feel dependent on their version of events. So we have to understand, one of the things I tell people I work with is that gaslighting is the language of people who are abusive. It's the language of abusers. What I mean by that is that we have to understand that gaslighting has the intent to not only get you to question your own reality, but also to get you to depend on theirs. Why? Because they want control. Right? So you have to understand that if someone is engaging in gaslighting behavior, that person genuinely wants you to think that you're crazy. They don't want you to have your own thoughts and your own focus. Oftentimes when people are going through a breakup or a divorce with someone who is a gaslighter or is highly manipulative like this, they begin to, the person is oftentimes very confused. Very confused about a lot of times people will talk about brain fog. Right, where all of a sudden they don't feel like they remember things correctly, or they start to question everything, whether or not they were the ones who caused this person to do the horrible things. And there's a lot that goes into gaslighting, but we have to understand that gaslighting also can be a part of hoovering, which is the reason why no contact becomes vitally important, because you have a default to allow for this person to do these type of things, because you think internally that this is a way that you can not only keep the relationship, but also to keep yourself safe. So to give a quick rundown for those of you who just joined, we're talking about signs that you're being hoovered. Not that they really actually want you back, or that they want genuine change, but they just want you back for control and for manipulative purposes. So number 1 is empty promises. Number 2, They have non-stop contact, so they're just bombarding you with messages, DMs, phone calls. Doesn't matter if it's to you, to your friends, family members, coworkers. Number 3 is over-the-top gestures, also known as love bombing. Number 4, which is what we just went over, was gaslighting. And number 5, and this is something that's not talked about enough, they begin to manufacture a crisis. If you've ever felt stuck in a toxic relationship pattern that don't serve you, or you're trying to get through some challenging parts of life after dealing with a toxic relationship, therapy is a powerful tool for self-discovery and healing. And BetterHelp makes it easier than ever for you to get the support that you need. It's online, it's flexible, and it's tailored to your unique journey. Investing into your mental health is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. So if you're ready to take the next step, go to the links in my description box to get matched with a licensed therapist through BetterHelp. And because you're a part of my community, you'll get 15% off your first month of therapy. They begin to manufacture a crisis. So what do I mean? What do I mean by that? They create or exaggerate emergencies. All of a sudden, they have cancer. All of a sudden, and I want to be very sensitive to this, right? Because there are people who genuinely struggle with certain things or may have actually gotten into. But what I'm talking about is a manipulative tactic that people don't talk about very much, where someone actually manufactures a crisis, where all of a sudden you're going through a divorce or going through a breakup, and this person all of a sudden gets sick. All of a sudden there's an emergency. All of a sudden they're in the hospital. All of a sudden they need your help. All of a sudden they can't pay their bills. All of a sudden their tires are slashed. All of a sudden they're having car issues, and the only person on the face of the planet who's able to help them is you. And oftentimes we have to understand that people who are in these type of situations oftentimes already struggle with codependent type of behavior. Right? So when you have these type of codependent type of behaviors, what happens? Remember, for those of you who follow me for a long time, when we talk about the FOG method, fear, obligation, and guilt, where they make you feel fear that you're going to lose them. You make you feel obligated to come take care of them. Or they make you feel guilty that you're not, or that you're setting a boundary because they have no one else that they can rely on. They have no one else that will take care of them. They have no one else that could do this. They have no one else that could do that, right? And so they exaggerate these emergencies or create an emergency. And sometimes when we talk about manufacturing a crisis, it also can come in the form of them saying that they're going to unalive themselves, right? So these manufactured crises can look and feel very different depending on who the person is. So this can look like health scares. This can look like personal tragedies. And we have to remember that this is in a way to evoke your sympathy and to draw you back into their orbit. Thank you very much for the gifts. I appreciate it. So that's number 5. So again, for those of you who just joined, we're talking about signs that you're being hoovered, where someone's trying to suck you back into toxic dynamics. So number 1 was they come up with empty promises. Number 2, you create non-stop contact. Number 3, over-the-top gestures or love bombing. Number 4, gaslighting. Number 5, they begin to manufacture crises. And number 6 is that they pretend like everything is fine. What do I mean by that? How can that draw someone back in? They just act like nothing ever happened. Right? This is another situation that people don't talk about enough. They just show up to your house and act like nothing, like it's just an average Tuesday. It can be at on the tail end, the night before. They may have been extremely physically abusive. They may have just gotten caught cheating. There could have been a complete meltdown. There could have been like a drunken night of abuse or whatever. And then the next day they just act like nothing ever happened. You could have served them divorce papers. They just act like nothing ever happened. And then when you bring it up, you're still mad about that? Oh, you were serious? And all of a sudden, this is where they piggyback what's called feigning ignorant, where they're just basically plain dumb. They act like nothing has changed, ignoring any boundaries that you set or that you stated. And they continue the interactions like nothing ever happened. They might just show up to your job, right? And oftentimes this also can go hand in hand with what we were talking about before with love bombing, right? They act like nothing ever happened, and all of a sudden you start getting flowers, you start getting, over the top sexual gestures and those sorts of things, right? And so they just pretend like everything is fine. So the reason why it's important to recognize these type of behaviors is because a lot of times, if you are the one that's going through this, it can be very confusing. It can be a struggle for people to understand that this person really actually is not only being problematic, but also that this person is being manipulative. And a lot of times people within your sphere don't recognize it because they just don't understand this behavior either. So your friends and family might actually encourage for you to, well, maybe things are different now. Maybe things have changed. Maybe you should give them a second chance. Maybe you should give them a fifth chance, right? Thinking that this type of behavior is normal and this type of behavior is okay. So I'm going to go through the 6 again real quick, and then I'm going to take some questions. So number 1 is empty promises. Number 2 is nonstop contact. Number 3 is over-the-top gestures. Number 4 is gaslighting. Number 4, they begin to manufacture a crisis. And number 6, they pretend like everything is fine. Thank you very much for watching. If you want more content like this, if you go down into the description box, I have a playlist where I have other similar videos. Also, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter where I send out free advice. And also be sure to connect with a BetterHelp therapist. If you use the link down below, you'll be able to get 15% off your first month of therapy. With that being said, I will see you in the next video.